Hello everybody, it's time for my weekly wrap-up of January 24th, 2016. I got that right on the first try! I didn't do a weekly wrap-up last week, so most of what I'm going to be talking about today is actually from not this past week, but the week before that, because most of what I read this week is going to be a completely separate video. Once I get done rereading that series, I will come back to that in a minute. I'm going to start with the book that I DNF'd first, though. I did DNF Queen of Candesce by Karl Schroeder. It's the second book in his Virga series, which is about a universe inside of a universe, an artificially created universe, like a big balloon full of oxygen and dirt and rock, and people live inside of it on these floating, spinning cities. And it's very much hard science fiction with kind of a Western steampunk feel to it. Describing it like that, I'm like, why didn't I enjoy this? Like, I should really enjoy this. I just couldn't get into this one. I think it's that the characters didn't work for me. The first book, Son of Suns, I thought that the characterization was pretty awful. It was just totally flat characters. And then Queen of Candesce focuses on one of the characters that's introduced in the first book. Her name is Vanera Fanning, and I hate her. She's an unlikable person, and I didn't even think it was enjoyable to read about an unlikable person. Nope. So I DNF'd it. I'm not going to continue with this series, but I will certainly pick up other things by Karl Schroeder. I think I still have a good chance of really enjoying his other work. Then I listened to the audiobook version of Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman, which was a delightful children's book. It's the story of a father who goes out to get some milk for his children's breakfast cereal. He takes forever, and then when he comes back, he tells this string of tall tales to explain what delayed him, including aliens and a dinosaur and a hot air balloon and time hopping stuff. This is really fun to listen to. I mean, it's very short. I think it's like an hour-long audiobook, and I listened to it while I was doing my adult coloring, and it was highly enjoyable. I recommend it. I love it when Neil Gaiman narrates his own stuff, but this one, I would actually like to someday see the physical version with all the illustrations, because that's sort of the whole deal right there. Next, I read Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers, which is the first book in publication order in the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery series. I started in the middle of this series with Strong Poison. I read 3 of them, and then I'm going back to start the series and read them in publication order. And this first one, it feels like the first book, like the characters are still kind of not quite settled into what they will be in later books, but it was still a very enjoyable murder mystery. It hit the spot just exactly. Basically, Lord Peter is called in by a friend to investigate a dead body that shows up in somebody's bathtub, and then his friend Parker at Scotland Yard introduces him to another mystery, the disappearance of a man, and they're trying to connect the two incidents and see what really happened. And yeah, it was pretty straightforward, but I did not actually guess the ending until really close to the reveal, so that was pretty good. I finally came back to the Fairyland series by Catherynne and Valente, and I read The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two, which is the third book in that series, and I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed in this one. The Fairyland series follows a young girl named September who, of course, goes on these adventures in Fairyland, and this book is her 3rd adventure there. She's now 14. She's starting to worry that she won't be able to come back to Fairyland because she's not a child anymore, and in this one she goes to the moon. She's reunited with some of her old friends, which was the best part of the book, but I feel like the plot got lost. I was really struggling with why I was taking this book so slowly. It is still very well written, and I think all the characters remain true to themselves. They're all behaving in ways that I expected them to behave, but the plot was just September driving through Fairyland from one lecture to another lecture. It felt like very preachy, like the point of the story was just for September to go see these adult figures and have them say something to her. And certainly this has happened in previous books, but for some reason it just didn't work so well in this one. I thought I was making it up, and I saw some other reviews on Goodreads that mentioned the same thing, so I know I'm not completely alone. I really did enjoy it though. Like I said, the writing is great, the characters are great, the idea is great, but I really hope that the next book, the fourth one that has the switch to the boy as the main character, gets back with a better story and feel of the series. One of the most enjoyable books, but also the biggest surprise of the past couple of weeks for me, was The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKillip, because I had a completely incorrect conception about what this book was. A couple of years ago, I went and read a whole bunch of stuff by McKillip. I was trying to catch up on her bibliography because I really liked her stuff as a teenager, and I skipped this book because I thought it was a YA fantasy about a teenage girl and her dragons, and at that point I said, I really don't need to read a book like that. There are other things I'd rather spend my time on. And then this Fantasy Masterworks edition came out, and I thought, maybe I should try to read that. This is being treated like an adult novel, so I bought it because it's pretty. And then I started reading it. This is not a YA fantasy about a teenage girl and her dragons. It is so much more than that. It's actually about a woman named Sybil who is about 30 years old. She's a wizard and she has a bestiary. It has one dragon in it, but also has a falcon or a hawk, a boar, a swan, and a lion. All these mythical creatures from legend. She adopts a baby. She raises this child as her own. She comes to love him. And then one day, these people come to take him away to make him the prince because he is the son of the king. And throughout the story, she is learning to love, to have these connections with other people, to care for them. This is a story about power, about a woman who is tempted by power, who realizes that her son is also tempted by it and wants to protect him from being used as a pawn in a political game that she thinks is unnecessary, and why should we be involved in that? So it's about her evolution as a person, coming to love people, to admit that she loves people, making some mistakes in relationships, and making choices about power and rejecting power or accepting it. What is the proper use of power? It's definitely a story that's more about these themes than the fantasy veneer that it has. It's not about dragons. Yes, the mythical beasts are part of the story, they're characters themselves, but it's really in the mind of this woman, and she is not a perfect person, and I really liked that. If you're interested in reading older fantasy, and you're interested in reading an older fantasy that is not that typical epic high medievalist type, then this is for you. It's more that mythical Arthurian type of feel, I would say, but this is also a type of fantasy from an era of fantasy that I haven't read that much in, so my descriptions are pretty contextless for myself, but it is the type of thing that I really enjoy reading, so I need to read more 1970s, 80s fantasy. Then I read Sheepfarmer's Daughter by Elizabeth Moon. It's the first book in this Date of Paxson trilogy, and it's a fantasy series unlike the science fiction series that I read by Moon last year. I read this with a bunch of people, including Bree from Stories from the Shelf, Tara from Terabyte, and Catherynne from The Android's Conundrum. And some of us had read Moon before, some of us hadn't, but this is the first time I've read fantasy by her. I thought that the premise of this one was intriguing. I was mostly drawn to this because Monica from Soph Blueberry mentioned it a while ago as having a canonically, definitely asexual main character, a woman who is a soldier. And I thought, I want to read that. I really want to read about a character like that. So I picked this up, I read it, and it was okay. This story is about a girl named Pax, or Paxson, who runs away from home to avoid a marriage that she doesn't want anything to do with. She wants to be a soldier, so she joins a mercenary company, and the story, this first book at least, is the training part. Her going from being a fresh recruit to a seasoned veteran who's gone through a couple of campaigns and a series of battles. The story is kind of slow because of that. It's very much the day-to-day, everyday, quotidian life of a soldier. There's lots of marching and the digging of latrines and camping out and being cold and wondering where your next meal is going to come from. And that's enjoyable on a certain level. I do enjoy reading about those everyday things, but it just got a bit too slow and a bit too samey throughout parts of it. Like the campaigns and various battles would happen so quickly in succession that I would forget where we were and who we were actually fighting this time. But I did like the character of Pax. I think that with the next couple of books, when more magic is introduced into the story and maybe it gets more complex, I will enjoy it more. For now, I'm going to just leave the series. I will come back to it, but I have some other things that I really want to read right now instead. So this one will go on my list of series to finish eventually. If you were wondering about what else I read this past week, let me show them to you. I reread 8 out of 9 books in the Young Wizards series by Diane Duane in 7 days. I went a little bit crazy with that. I am currently rereading the 9th book, at which point I'll be done. I'll be caught up with the series. Well, I have to read an interim air entry, which fills in some gaps between the 9th and 10th books, but when I am done rereading the 9th book, I'm just gonna do a separate video about this series. I need some time to put my thoughts together about the individual books and about the story arcs and stuff. In short, this series follows 2 friends, a girl named Nnedi and a boy named Kit, who discover that they are wizards. They stumble across these manuals that teach them how to do wizardry, and in each book they are fighting against the force of evil, the lone power, which is entropy, or the slow death of the universe, the slow winding down of everything. It starts off with a kind of middle grade feel with the books first published in the 80s and 90s, and then it progressively, when you get closer to the last 3 books, feels more like modern day YA. But it's a great series about really good teenage characters who have great families, who are doing good in the world and have to deal with growing up and the struggles of family and loss and death and the responsibility of power. And I love it so much. That's it for me. I really hope I'm not headed towards a reading burnout after binging on Young Wizards, but it was so enjoyable, guys. I really should be reading my library books. I've got like a stack down here. I should be reading those. Eventually, it'll all come in time. So yeah, I hope you guys had a great weekend. Let me know what you read. Have you read any of these and do you want to talk about them? And I'll be back soonish with another video. It'll either be a book haul or one of my bookshelf tour installments. We'll see what I manage to get edited because I'm all over the place this morning. But until then, bye.